Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series on current affairs. Now as you all know that we have changed the format of our current affairs lecture series. Now we are going to cover current affairs subject wise, okay? And with every lecture we will cover one particular subject's current affairs from the past 1 week. Now today we are going to cover international relations related current affairs from the past 1 week, right? Now let me tell this to you in advance, this is really important and I will say it again and again. That just watching this lecture would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Now, why I tell you to revise it? Because, well, otherwise, by just watching this lecture, you'll quickly forget these current affairs. So you need to retain them at least till your examinations. That is why revision is extremely important. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, let's begin today's session. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So let's begin. So current affairs, international relations, June 2026, part 1. As you all know, 1 month has 4 weeks. So June related current affairs from international relations will have 4 parts because we are covering weekly current affairs, right? So here are the topics. Number 1 is the relationship between India and Cyprus, because both these countries have decided to elevate their partnership to strategic partnership. Now, this is really important. Cyprus is really important for us. In fact, India is also important for Cyprus, and Cyprus is important for us. Why? Well, we'll talk about this. Then second topic is related to India-Myanmar Presidential Summit. Myanmar's president, and basically Myanmar has a military dictatorship. So general came to India and we had a summit and we talked about certain things. We tried to strengthen the relationship with Myanmar. Now, Myanmar is very important from the perspective of India's Act East policy, from the perspective of China also. Okay, and this shows the flexibility. Our engagement with Myanmar's leadership shows our flexibility in our foreign policy. Okay, so we'll talk about this flexibility as well. So this is topic number 2. Then topic number 3 is related to, you all know, Prime Minister of Nepal, Balin Shah, basically raked up the boundary dispute between India and Nepal, which is around the Uttarakhand area. Well, he has raked up this controversy again, so we'll talk about this dispute. And in the end, we'll talk about Quad Foreign Ministers' joint statement. You all know Secretary of State for United States, Marco Rubio, was here, and he was here for Quad Summit. Okay, the summit between 4 countries, Quad Foreign Ministers Summit. Now, what is this organization called Quad? Why is it strategically important? We'll talk about this as well. So these are the 4 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is India-Cyprus strategic partnership. Now, what is Cyprus basically and why is it important? Cyprus is kind of an island in the Mediterranean Sea. It is very close to Turkey and it is important for India. Now, it is important for India from 2 perspectives, okay? One is geoeconomics, economics wise. And the other is geostrategic or geopolitical. Let's be precise about it. So one is related to economics, international economics, and one is related to international politics or strategy. Okay. Now, if we talk about economics aspect, well, you all know that India is basically promoting this corridor called India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. This economic corridor would boost the trade between India and Europe. Okay. And Middle East would lie in the middle of it. So all 3 regions would benefit from that, and India is really hopeful with respect to this corridor. It should be implemented. Now, Cyprus just lies at the gateway of Europe. Cyprus lies on this corridor and it actually marks, or it actually is the gateway to Europe. Hence, India's solidified relationship with Cyprus is really important for the success of this corridor. So this is geoeconomics. And geopolitical is where Turkey and Cyprus do not see eye to eye. They don't have a very good relationship. Turkey and India also do not have a good relationship, and India accuses Turkey of propping up Pakistan to trouble India, right? So if Turkey is doing this in India's backyard with respect to Pakistan, India can do the same in Turkey's backyard using Cyprus, right? So this is the geopolitical aspect. Okay, so these are the 2 dimensions which make Cyprus really important for us. And that is why we are going to investigate all of that. And we'll also talk about the meetings that, or the agreements that both sides actually signed. Okay, so let's discuss this. So India-Cyprus strategic partnership. So the introduction, bilateral relationship between the 2 countries achieved a historic milestone when the president of Cyprus visited India. Okay, then to sustain this momentum, India's external affairs minister also went to Cyprus, Limassol, Nicosia, all the neighboring regions. Okay, now the thing is that Cyprus was really impressed by India's performance in Operation Sindoor. It is really impressed by it, specifically with respect to India's missiles, air defense, and drone defense or drone warfare capabilities. And you all know that in Operation Sindoor, we used Indian weapons, indigenous weapons, right? We did use foreign weapons as well, but Operation Sindoor showcased our capability or the capability of our own produced weapons, right? That is why there is this huge demand for Indian military hardware, Indian military weapons or Indian weapons, basically. There is this huge demand for that. And Cyprus is among those nations who are demanding India's military hardware. So this is really good news for India's defense exports as well, as India is trying to promote it. Okay, this is good for our defense manufacturing. This would boost our GDP, produce so many jobs, and boost our exports as well, plus build relationships with different countries. Because if you have defense relationship with any country, well, you are very close, like we have with Russia. Okay, so this is one aspect which solidifies our partnership. Okay, so basically I told you there are two aspects to it: geopolitical, geoeconomics. The defense aspect is also there. Okay, now first let's talk about geoeconomics. Okay, why is Cyprus important? Now, first of all, like I told you, IMEC node, India Middle East Economic Corridor, since Cyprus lies on this corridor and acts as a gateway to Mediterranean Sea, gateway to Europe. So this is there. Plus, Cyprus is really impressed by our UPI. So we are exploring possibilities of making UPI interoperable in Cyprus as well. Interoperability of Cypriot payment systems and UPI. So this would give a big boost to our fintech sector. And, well, we are also trying to boost our trade between the two countries, investment between the two countries. Okay, so this is the thing, right? Now, let's talk about geopolitical significance. So we have discussed two things: defense significance, geoeconomics, and now geopolitical. So the first angle is the Turkey-Pakistan axis, and India-Cyprus can counter Turkey-Pakistan axis. By building a robust strategic partnership with Cyprus, New Delhi secures a powerful diplomatic counterweight. This is a very important keyword. In the Eastern Mediterranean, utilizing reciprocal leverage strategy. Reciprocal. You're propping up Pakistan, we'll prop up Cyprus. Okay. Plus, Cyprus was basically hosting this summit, Gymnish platform. This Gymnish platform invited like-minded countries from European Union, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, and India. And they basically talked about how to secure sea lanes of communication, sea lanes of trade. Okay, because all these countries are worried about the Strait of Hormuz crisis, West Asia crisis. So they are basically coming together to secure these sea lanes, ocean lanes. Okay, so India's invitation to this Gymnish platform showcases that Europe considers India to be an important partner in its own interests. So this is there. Plus, Cyprus basically said that we support India's candidature for permanent membership in United Nations Security Council and India's candidature for Nuclear Suppliers Group. If India becomes a part of Nuclear Suppliers Group, India doesn't have to worry about uranium supplies to fuel its nuclear power. Okay, so Cyprus basically is supporting us out and out in the international arena. That is why we call it a strategic partnership. And Cyprus isn't doing this out of its own benevolence. Well, India is also giving a lot of things in return. So it's a win-win partnership basically between the two countries. Okay, so that is why Cyprus is important. Now, one more thing, I should have said this thing at the start of the lecture, but let me say it now before I forget it. And that is, well, basically, whenever we are discussing IR-related current affairs, international relations-related current affairs, we'll be talking about regions, countries, continents. Well, do locate these regions, countries, continents in your map, in Atlas, if you possess one. By the way, your notes would contain photographs of these maps. So when you open your notes, you will have the map of Cyprus, you will have the map of other regions or countries that we are going to discuss in this lecture. So do check out the notes and do memorize these locations, because location-based MCQs are asked in your prelims examination. So be careful about that, okay? Alright. Now let's move on to second news item, and that is India-Myanmar Presidential Summit. Now, to understand this topic, you need to have a little bit of background. Okay? You see, Myanmar is a complicated country. At this very moment, well, Myanmar is being run by a military dictatorship, but there are various regions of Myanmar bordering India that have these rebel groups that control territory as well. So there is a civil war-like situation. There are various terrorist or insurgent organizations that basically control certain territories. Military has no control over these areas. Okay, it is really bad. The situation is really bad. There is no single power source over there. Nonetheless, well, majority of Myanmar is still under military control. Okay. Now the thing is, and this is really important for you to understand, the thing is that Myanmar is being run by a military dictatorship. Now, a few years back, Myanmar was a democracy. Okay, it has been a military dictatorship. Then there was this brief period when democracy was there and Aung San Suu Kyi was the leader. Okay, Aung San Suu Kyi had really good relations with India as well. So India supported her. India supports democracy in Myanmar. Now the thing is, when Aung San Suu Kyi was removed from power through a military coup, well, India did not like it, and India took a principled stand. That principled stand was that we support a democratic regime. We do not support a military dictatorship. That is why Myanmar's leadership, the military, and India were not having very good relations. This was there. Now, all of that was because India took a principled stand in support of democracy. But that costed us. Because in the meanwhile, China had no such problems. Okay, so China said, we don't care whether you have democracy or military dictatorship, we will deal with whoever is in power. So China started making inroads in Myanmar. And China basically became very powerful in that region. So many Chinese interests were being taken care of. And that threatens Indian interests. Therefore, India realized that we can't completely rely on a principled stand. We have to be realistic, follow real politics, be pragmatic. Okay? And we want to be pragmatic not just because of China, but because India and Myanmar share a very long border. Many insurgent groups in Northeast cross this border to safe havens in Myanmar. We need the support of whoever is the ruler of Myanmar to stop insurgency in India's Northeast. Okay? So we need to talk to whoever is in charge of Myanmar. Plus, Myanmar is our gateway to ASEAN. And ASEAN countries are important for India's Act East policy. Okay? So these are the things because of which Myanmar is really important. So we need to engage with Myanmar. And India decided to follow pragmatic approach, real politic approach, remove its principled stand in the background and started dealing with whoever is in charge of Myanmar. And that is why we invited the general who is in power in Myanmar to the presidential summit in India. This is the background. Now let's talk about this, okay? So India-Myanmar Presidential Summit. So this is the background, okay? So Senior General U Min Aung Hang, a high-profile presidential summit at Hyderabad House and Rashtrapati Bhavan. Now this engagement with military dictatorship of Myanmar showcases India's maturity and shift towards pragmatism and real politic approach. Real politic approach, okay? This is what India is trying to do. Make sense? Now, 4 pillars or 3 pillars of India-Myanmar relationship. Basically, we need Myanmar for these 3 strategic reasons. Number 1, border security and counter-insurgency, especially in the Northeast. Then, we are trying to build infrastructure projects, roads, bridges from Northeast of India towards to ASEAN countries, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam. And Myanmar lies in the middle. So for infrastructure and connectivity also, Myanmar is important. Plus, we also have a strategic project called Kaladan Multimodal Project. Through this, we are going to reach Northeast of India bypassing Bangladesh. You currently know that for India to reach Northeast, we have to pass through this chicken's neck. That is really vulnerable. So this Kaladan Multimodal Project would start from Kolkata towards the Myanmarese port, and through high-speed rail corridors, it will reach India's Northeast. Okay, so this is why. Make sense? Okay. And Act East policy. This is for that also. Clear? Now, basically, what are we trying to achieve through this Myanmar engagement with Myanmar president? Okay, this is the analytical takeaway. First of all, Myanmar is one such country in through which we basically follow two policies, two foreign policies in one. And that is, well, India has a neighborhood first policy, and China is India's neighbor. We share a border. And Act East policy. Okay, so this is there. Plus, it serves as India's sole land bridge to ASEAN bloc. We have discussed this. Plus, India is prioritizing immediate neighborhood and securing its borders, removing its principled stand for democracy. We don't care. We care about democracy in India. Anywhere else, well, we leave that to those countries or the people of those countries. And while New Delhi supports a peaceful return to democratic system, it maintains active pragmatic. Pragmatic means practical ties with current administration to safeguard its vital security and geo-economic interests. Okay, now let's move on to third news item, and that is Nepal PM's boundary controversy. You see, there is a boundary dispute between India and Nepal, and that is basically related to this region called Limpiudhara, Lipu Lake and Kalapani region, which currently lies in Uttarakhand, but Nepal claims it to be their territory. Okay, now this issue has been raked up by politicians in Nepal every now and then. Basically, there is this thing in Nepal that whenever a politician wants to be more popular or showcase this strongman image, they basically stoke up anti-India sentiments. And I guess, and many experts also believe so, that Prime Minister Balen Shah is also doing the same. Now, what is important for us? Politics is not important for us. Nepalese politics, Indian politics is not important for us. But for us, we need to know that what is this boundary dispute that everyone is talking about. So let's investigate that. By the way, in your notes, I've also shared the map of the region. It's very important for you to study the map as well. Okay? All right then, let's begin. So Nepal PM's boundary controversy. So what was basically there? What's the context? So Nepal's Prime Minister Balendra Shah sparked a strong response from New Delhi by publicly stating that cross-border land use disparities, unilateral infrastructure construction, and territorial encroachment challenges persist along the Kalapani, Lipu Lake and Limpiudhara. Now, first of all, do check out the map though, okay? Do check out the map. But first of all, let me explain the reason for this dispute, okay? Look, there was this war between British East India Company and Nepal. It is also known as the Anglo-Gurkha War. Okay, well, Nepal lost, and there was this treaty between Nepal and East India Company, British East India Company in 1816, known as the Treaty of Sogoli. Okay, now in this treaty, the boundary between the two regions, or the boundary between East India's domain and Nepal's domain, was decided. Okay, now the boundary for the western border, okay, between East India Company and Nepal, well, that was decided to be the Kali River or Mahakali River. Okay, that was the boundary. But the problem arises with respect to the origin of this Kali River. Okay, because this Kali river also shifts courses. Okay, so sometimes it comes from over here, sometimes it comes from over here, and plus the map makers during the East India Company's time, well, they produce a lot of maps, and in every map there is a change. Sometimes they show it to be originating from here, sometimes they show it to be originating from here. Now, to conceptually understand, though, do look at the map. Well, India believes that this river starts from here. Okay, Nepal believes this river starts from here. Now, because of India's belief from here, well, this is the state of Uttarakhand. Okay, and this particular territory lies in India. But because Nepal believes this area to be this river to be originating from here, Nepal claims this area to be itself, to be a part of its own territory. Okay, this is the dispute basically. You understand, though the diagram hasn't been neat, but I hope you understand. It's with respect to map making. The dispute is because of faulty maps and because of the origin point of Kali River. Now, this particular region which lies in Uttarakhand, well, this region basically has, this region is known as Kalapani, Lipu Lake and Limpiudhara region. Okay, Lipu Lake is an important pass. Okay, it is an important pass through which you can travel to Tibet. Now, India built a very good road and highway for defense purposes in this region and for also Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, because Yatris go to Kailash Mansarovar for this. Okay, they do pass through Lipu Lake Pass. Now, because India constructed this infrastructure project, Nepal objected to it in 2015, saying that this region belongs to them. This is a disputed region. How can you unilaterally construct this project? And then again, like I told you before, well, every time any politician wants to become popular, they rake up anti-India sentiments. Okay, so this happened. Then finally in 2020, well, Nepal basically brought about a constitutional amendment, producing maps in those constitutional amendments showing this territory to be within Nepal. That really angered India, and this created a divide between the two countries. And both countries, well, basically need each other. And Nepal needs India more than India needs Nepal. Nonetheless, this was there. So the dispute is because of the origin point of Mahakali River. Okay, and the region is Kalapani, Lipu Lake, and Limpiyudhara region. Clear? Now, the thing is, why this issue escalated? What was the escalation ladder? Well, the issue, basically the angering point started in 2020 constitutional amendment in response to India's road construction through Lipu Lake Pass. Nepal's parliament passed a historic amendment in 2020. This amendment officially modified Nepal's map to include Kalapani, Lipu Lake, Limpiyudhara region into its own territory. Then now in 2026, Balendra Shah again reiterated this issue. This is the problem. Now, why is this dispute important? Why is it important for India to pay attention to it? Number one, well, this region, this particular region is strategically very important because it is the tri-junction area. Tri-junction area, well, this particular region, well, India is over from here, Nepal, and then China, Tibet or China. Okay, so this region is important from the perspective of countering China in India's border. So India needs control of this region. This is there. Then this controversy basically harms India-Nepal relations. Okay, and this is really bad for India's neighborhood first policy as well. Plus, there are certain joint projects, joint hydroelectric projects, which will get delayed because politically two countries are not seeing eye to eye. So this is really harmful. These are the strategic implications. One is the China factor and the other is close cooperation between India and Nepal. That can become a casualty. Okay, that's about it. Though do study the map. It is shared in your notes. All right. And now let's move on to our last news item of the day, and that is Quad Foreign Ministers joint statement. You see, what has happened is that there is a particular region known as the Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific region is basically Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. In that area, in this area, China is asserting its dominance, particularly in the South China Sea. Okay. Now, Chinese interests are basically counter to all the other countries' interests because China is asserting its dominance in this area. Well, ASEAN countries are worried, India is worried, Australia is worried, Japan is worried. And naturally, if China is rising to power, USA is also worried. So to contain China, though this is not the official policy, but everyone understands that to contain China, the powerful countries of the Indo-Pacific, USA, Australia, Japan, and India have created a group. They called it Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, but the short form is Quad. Some people call it the Indo-Pacific or the Asian NATO. It's kind of like a NATO alliance, but the leaders of these four countries deny this. They deny it completely, that we are created to counter China. Okay, they deny it. They say that we want to keep the oceans, international waters free, open, and inclusive. That's their mantra. But everyone knows why they are doing it. Now, this is the reason why, despite so many friction points between India and USA, whether it's with respect to anti-India sentiment in USA, whether it's with respect to tariff policy of Donald Trump, still both countries need each other in the Indo-Pacific region. And for that reason, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, was in India and he was here to attend the Quad Summit. Now, the Quad Summit concluded successfully and it gave out a joint statement. What were the key pillars of that joint statement? We will discuss that as well. Clear? I hope you understood the background. Now, let's talk about it. So, Quad Foreign Ministers joint statement. So, New Delhi hosted 11th Quad meeting at Hyderabad House. This is a very important dialogue. All right. Now, Quad. What is the significance of Quad? You can write this in your mains answer as well. Quad represents 24% of the world's population, these four countries, 35% of the global GDP, 18% of the global trade. And it is standing for free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Remember these points. Okay. Now, what were the key pillars of this joint statement? Maritime and transnational security. Okay. Economic prosperity and energy security, especially partnerships with respect to critical minerals, in which China is asserting its dominance. And all new products are made up of these critical minerals, whether they are electric vehicles, batteries, everything. critical and emerging technology, AI, big data, and humanitarian assistance and emergency response. In this entire Indo-Pacific region, whichever country needs humanitarian relief because of natural disasters, these 4 countries are going to provide that. Basically, these were the 4 pillars of the discussion. Now, what is the strategic significance of Quad? Let's talk about this. First of all, this shows India's strategic autonomy because India is part of BRICS, which is the representative of Global South. But India is also part of Quad, which means that India is ready to partner up with Global South, developing countries, and the powerful countries like USA. So this shows India's balanced approach. India is the only bridge between Global South and Global North because of dual membership in these 2 organizations. So this showcases India's strategic autonomy. So this is great. Then along the sidelines of this summit, India and USA signed critical minerals partnership also, where both countries would cooperate with respect to the supply of critical minerals. Then counterbalancing structural expansion of China in Pacific islands like Fiji, Palau, and all that. Clear? So these are the strategic implications of this, and that's about it. Right? Okay then. That would be all. With that, we conclude today's lecture. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. I'm sure about it. Now, it would add more value if you're number 1, consistent and regular with this lecture series, and number 2, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. Because if you don't revise this lecture, well, these current affairs would quickly skip your memory, and we need to avoid that. So do the necessary revision. It would take 15 minutes or 20 minutes of your time, but do that, right? Okay. So on that note, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another lecture in this lecture series called Current Affairs. Thank you, everyone.